So we have a lot to talk about, but before we even talk about this week, I just want to thank you guys for all of the love and support I got in my last video. I can't believe how many comments I got. It was like really overwhelming, but I appreciate all of the love that you guys been giving me in the feedback. It's really nice. It's weird being a YouTuber because I don't relate to other YouTubers because there's a lot of you that I've seen comment that I've talked to personally. And like, a lot of you are my clients, and it's not like these are casual conversations that we're having. I talk to you guys about your lives and what's going on. So I don't know. I just feel really connected to, like, again, everyone that comments and everything. So I just really appreciate, again, all of the love that I got. Yeah, last week we had, of course, the whole Mercury retrograde, right? Setting everything into motion. But I hope you're ready for it, because this week, like, we're in the thick of it this week. We're here, and things are just getting started, really. And there's a lot that changes this week as far as the direction goes. We gotta kind of talk about a few things before we talk about the thing I want to talk about. Which, there we go. We're gonna talk about this full moon in Cancer on Monday, right? But I want to point your attention to Tuesday. On Tuesday, we're having that North Node, South Node switch into Taurus and Scorpio. Now, I did a whole video about that already, so make sure you guys check that out if you haven't already. I go over what that means, what it even is, and how it's going to be affecting your zodiac sign. So I really went in depth with it too, so you guys, because I know the nodes can be kind of like a hard concept or a hard topic to talk about or understand. So I did that video, but I'm really, I mean, like, I cannot emphasize enough how important the nodes changing signs is. It's hard. Like, we have to talk about this full moon in Cancer first, but I really want to talk about Tuesday, so we're going to get to that. But anyway, let's go ahead and look at as we get into Monday. So the biggest thing with Monday, whoops, I should probably actually talk about what's going on Monday. And that is, of course, the full moon in Cancer. The moon, pretty much the only other thing is on Monday is the moon. After we have the full moon, it pretty much ingresses right into Leo. That's a bigger deal for when we get into Tuesday, but it's really just the full moon in Cancer on Monday. And what's hard about the full moon in Cancer this time around is, I mean, it's like, we're going to talk about everything that it's highlighting, but it's like after this full moon in Cancer, it's like the nodes change and we're on to like a different subject. Like Monday and Tuesday are two completely different days. That's for sure. Things feel differently. Things look differently. But on Monday, I mean, it's the full moon in Cancer, like pretty much on top of Pluto. This is coming off from that new moon in Capricorn, where we kind of got to clear the space here in Capricorn. I mean, this goes all the way back to 2018. 2018, when, or technically December of 2017, but 2018, when Saturn ingressed into Capricorn, and we had 3 years of Saturn in Capricorn with Pluto in Capricorn that culminated and maxed out to the COVID pandemic, right? And that also coincided with Saturn going into Aquarius. Then we have the Jupiter transit through Capricorn on top of Pluto, and now we have this Venus retrograde wrapping everything up, right? Venus is like, it's super funny. All of the economic conditions, it's all just stuff that's been building up since 2018, right? It's really interesting. This full moon, though, is kind of like the kicker, in my opinion. Sun went over Pluto, right? Now I'm recording this on Friday, so this is happening on Sunday, so I don't know what happens here. But the sun's on top of Pluto. There is this like realization, this connection to, again, power and fear. Where are things not working, and where are things going to work, right? I think the sun on top of Pluto is maybe realizing, again, what's corrupt, what doesn't work, what is falling apart. But I think on a personal level, this is also about like, hey, this isn't something that, Pluto can be a very, again, overwhelming planet. If you even want to call it a planet, I've heard it described one way is that like it literally makes the big things small and the small things big. And I always find that really interesting because, it really is that two-way street where if it's not that big of a deal, it's not that big of a deal versus it could be everything. But with this being a full moon in Cancer, the full moon is a time of kind of like heightened emotions, realizations of emotions, kind of expressions of that, culminations, peaks of things. And this is in Cancer where we're talking about our needs, and we're talking about nourishment. We're talking about protection. We're talking about literally like, what do we need internally? Yeah, you can describe the full moon in Cancer. Yeah, sure, it's going to be emotional, but I think it's much more about like, what do we need? I mean, this is opposite Pluto too. And I mean, like, there's just a lot that's going on right now. I mean, I just think that this is like a Monday. We really go into Monday kind of realizing, oh, like this is happening. But I also think that there's this sense of really connecting to our needs. Maybe if it's hard for you to always connect to that and kind of, check in, this would be a great time to check in. But I think that it might feel a little overwhelming. Pluto's there. It might feel a little over the top. But I think the big thing here really is, it's we're going into a pretty intense winter, both, if you want to look at it on a world scale or on a personal level. Like, when we have like Mars enter Capricorn and everything's in Capricorn again and everything's in Aquarius, it's like, I mean, the only thing we'll really have going for us is Jupiter and Pisces, but everything else is Capricorn and Aquarius. It's going to be, not just intense. I don't always like using that word. It's just going to be very serious, very monotonous, very cut and dry, I think is maybe a good way to put it too. But on Monday, this full moon in Cancer is really just kind of looking at like, all right, like what do we need? This is, you can do all the Capricorn stuff all day long where it's all about rules and being serious and no emotions, but you have to have that full moon, right? Where you kind of go, it's that balance of Capricorn and Cancer. If you can put your needs first and you can know what, and what is what is of necessity, it's easy to make a plan. It's easy to structure everything around that, right? And I think this is just kind of realizing maybe what you need. A couple hours later on Monday, the moon's going to go into Leo, where things kind of get charged up, in my opinion, with passion. That moon in Leo is eventually on Tuesday going to hit Mercury and Saturn. So I think this full moon in Cancer is kind of like, hey, what's best for you? What do you need? And although power and fear are scary, like you have to face a lot of those fears to get what you need, right? Or you could ignore that gut feeling, and that doesn't ever really feel good, and that usually comes up later in life in some shitty way. You can ignore and kind of, cower like away in the sense of fear, or, you can kind of just like ask yourself, what do you need? Like and this is an emotional thing too. This is a trust thing, right? This isn't necessarily like, it's not always explosive and crazy, but I think as the moon goes into Leo right after it, there is this sense of confidence. There is this sense of like, you faced that. You handled that. I mean, Mercury is retrograding right now. We just had that Mercury square Uranus. Things got really shaky last week. We got a lot changing right now. I don't have to tell you guys that. And I just think as that moon goes into Leo on Monday night, there's this sense of like pride, like you did it. But it's hard. It's not easy. It's definitely not easy. Some of you are going to hate it too, but I think as the moon goes into Leo, it really is the sense of accomplishment and pride, which is really good. We get into Tuesday, and that tune changes. The whole song changes, really. Thank God we got to talk about the full moon in Cancer. I want to talk so much about the nodes moving in, because all I can think about is, do you guys remember the last time the nodes switched signs? It was during the George Floyd protests. It was like, I'm pretty sure that week, because that was also the Venus retrograde. Think about how much, has changed since spring of 2020. And when we think about it, right, like so what I love about talking about the nodes is you can do a whole reading just with the nodes, right? They work so well in terms of timing, and you can just focus completely on the nodes and not even do chart readings with any other planets. Think about what houses Gemini and Sagittarius rule in your chart, and what has changed in that area. I mean, we had the eclipses there, and the eclipses represent dramatic, gasping change. And they're very dramatic. They're very pivotal. You don't really expect them. You don't really see them coming. They kind of grab your attention, and you've had your attention grabbed in two places, Sagittarius and Gemini. Where is that at in your chart? And, think about spring of 2020, right? everything just started. Everything was just going on. The North Node went to Gemini. I think that's like when it was like the North Node in Gemini, Venus retrograde in Gemini. We were all getting into like Zoom meetings and shit like that. Then think of December of 2020. Then think of spring of 2021. And, this past December, like we've just so much is different, right? And you can go back to even the last time, the nodes before that in Cancer and Capricorn. Think of November 2018. That's when the nodes were in Cancer and Capricorn. So then all of 2019, the nodes were in Cancer and Capricorn. At the beginning of January of 2020, the nodes were in Cancer and Capricorn. And then we get to May and everything changed. And now we're having the nodes go into Taurus and Scorpio. Another, like, really can't emphasize it enough. You're going in a different direction. You're focusing your area, you're focusing your attention in a different area, for better or for worse, right? The eclipse has just changed so much. Now, hold on one second. Let's talk about it. Because on Tuesday, we got off that full moon in Leo, right? And the full moon in Cancer, it'll go into Leo. But then the moon makes that opposition to Mercury. Then, of course, makes a square to Uranus and then goes opposite Saturn. So there's this kind of like getting checked almost in a sense, but at the same time, the nodes have moved. So that to me is a big deal that we have this full moon, right? It's on top of Pluto. It's highlighting all of this Venus retrograde stuff. It's highlighting all this stuff. And then right after that full moon, nodes change. That seems pretty prophetic to me. So we get into Tuesday and yeah, do we wake up? Yeah, it's literally by 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, the nodes are in a different sign. Let's just talk about the North Node in Taurus for a second. Again, I did a whole video about this, but like I am so looking forward to this. That North Node is what you are compelled to go towards. It is where you're heading. It's sometimes you know why, sometimes you don't. Especially if this is your nodal return. I had a lot of comments on my Venus on my node video of like, what does it mean if I have this? It's either your nodal return or your nodal reversal. You're either doing shit opposite to what you're used to, or like, the wind is pushing, your sails in the direction you want to go in. That North Node in Taurus, there is going to be this compelling urge, this drive towards security, towards stability, towards growth, towards harmony, towards all of those good Venus things, right? That might not always be good. I mean, also like the North Node's going to hit Algol too, so it'll have its issues. But this North Node's going in Taurus, right? You also have to look at what Taurus rules in your chart. Of course, look at whatever house it rules. But the North Node going into Taurus is like, hey, you want to focus on security, on stability, on value, on enjoying those things, right? Looking at, I talked about things about the North Node being about life and the South Node in Scorpio being about death. And there's this bigger, I think with the North Node in Taurus, this bigger focus on the good, on what can be good and maybe securing that, right? And that's going to eventually culminate to the North Node hitting Uranus later on too. So we'll get really inventive about it. But like, this is a big fucking deal. You are going to feel different on Tuesday morning. You are going to feel like things are going in a different direction. And it's probably going to be good. Unless your life's out of control, maybe it's not going to be good. But the North Node going into Taurus is there's going to be this compelling urge. Also, too, this is a fixed sign, right? We want to keep things stable. We want to keep the good we want the good to last a long time, right? But that's going to require the South Node in Scorpio. That South Node is what you've got to go through in order to get here. That South Node is the prerequisite to the North Node. That South Node is, what you got to get rid of. And it's in Scorpio, right? If you want to grow flowers, you have to get dirty. Also too, when it comes to farming, this is something that, there's a lot of depleted nutrition in a lot of farms. And, when it comes to cow manure and other types of fertilizer, right? It takes literal shit to grow sustainable, nutritious food, right? That can replenish the soil. That's like, cow shit and piss is really good for the soil, especially if it's tilled and it's ran upon. Like the South Node in Scorpio is if you want to grow food, if you want things to flourish, if you want to, go if you want to extract and get more value out of your life, and enjoy the good things more. The South Node is like your roots have to run deep. There has to, like, if you look at a tree that's growing all tons of fruit, and and it's big and tall and strong, those roots run deep. Like, it's not some, everything's on the surface and light. That's a strong fucking plant. Like, trees are hella strong. And I just look at the South Node in Scorpio as like, you've got to dig deep, and you've got to do the hard work. You've got to go in, and you've got to get rid of what doesn't work, right? You have to till the soil. You have to take up what is from the bottom and bring it up to the top. And that takes a lot of work. And I just think the South Node in Scorpio is, you're going to get dirty, and some people don't want to get dirty. But if you want to grow your garden, that's the sacrifice that you have to make, right? That's the price that you have to pay. And what a small price. I think the South Node in Scorpio is, especially too, if there's going to be things that you can't ignore with the South Node in Scorpio, because the things that are repressed, the things that are at the bottom, they're going to come up. The Scorpio is what's hidden. Scorpio is what's in the dark. And that South Node in Scorpio is, it's kind of like, you could be afraid of the basement in the dark all you want, but then like on moving day, when you kind of have to clear out your basement, you're like, all right, whatever. Like, I gotta go down here and do my thing. The South Node in Scorpio is, you're not just facing your fears in the sake of facing your fears. You're going, like, the North Node in Taurus is like, there's something that you want. There's something that you deserve, but it takes that, like, you got to do the hard work. You got to do the shit that you don't want to necessarily do. But I think thinking of it in this way of, versus, for example, the South Node in Taurus, North Node in Scorpio would so be like, if the South Node is in Taurus, it's like, we got to give up our comfortability. We have to give up our luxuries in order to take care of the deep shit. That's kind of like, I would say the South Node in Taurus and North Node in Scorpio is like in the middle of winter, and you have like a pipe break, or like your sewage system overflows, and you're like, I gotta go outside in the cold and the wet and get uncomfortable to do this dumb job. Versus this is different. This is like, that North Node in Taurus is, if you want to have the comfortability, if you want to, again, have that value, that South Node in Scorpio is like, you gotta earn it. You have to, there are trials and tribulations that you will have to go through to get that. And I think the South Node in Scorpio is the sense of kind of getting over it. Like, there's a lot of getting over fear, letting go of anger, because that Scorpio stuff is what we regress. That Scorpio stuff is what we, it's that pain, right? And that sound like, and that North Node in Taurus is like, dude, we just want to get along. And I think that South Node in Scorpio is like, you've got to find a way to let go of that pain. That South Node in Scorpio is like, when you hold on to that pain, and when you hold on to that anger and that resentment, like, it manifests in you, and it's going to manifest in other areas. And that South Node in Scorpio is like, you got to get over it, because that shit's going to hurt you the longer you go on with it. And, I don't think this is all about, like, we're all just humans here, and we're all just, doing our best and learning, right? But I really feel like on Tuesday, there's this kind of like, this isn't hard. I really, like, I'm looking forward to this, because I think as the South Node goes in Scorpio, there's this sense of like, yeah, like, it's like, again, have you ever faced a fear and you realized how small it was, and you realized how dumb it was in the beginning, and then it changes your perception of like, why was I afraid of that in the first place? What else am I afraid of? And I think, again, this is coming off that full moon. This is like, we do kind of face a lot of fears, and we do it in this like emotional way. It's not necessarily like, oh, I'm facing my fears. It's like, I feel this way, and I have to express it because I can't hold it in. And then, the moon on Tuesday is going to go opposite Mercury in Aquarius. We would go, that's a little weird and different. Wasn't expecting that one. The moon will square Uranus in the middle of the day, and then also go opposite Saturn, right? Saturn's now flying forward. I think as the moon goes opposite Mercury at the beginning of the day, I think there is this sense of seeing things from a different perspective, seeing things from a bird's eye view, seeing things outside the box, right? I think as Mercury's stationing in retrograde in Aquarius squaring Uranus, it's like we might want to keep things consistent the same, but maybe that's just not working. And I think this moon in Leo opposite is like kind of realizing why the consistency can't be there, realizing what does kind of what does need to change, or realizing where you have changed, right? I mean, shit, Venus is almost direct. But I think as the moon goes opposite Mercury, as the nodes switch, this is really kind of like looking at things through a different perspective. The moon's in Leo, you're feeling a little ballsy now, feeling a little confident, feeling a little cocky. And that moon's going to square Uranus where, sure, you might change things a little bit. I think that, we have like a month of play around time to figure out how these nodes are for a minute until we really see them manifest later on in eclipse season. But I think as the moon squares Uranus, there is this kind of like upheaval. There is this sudden shift, and then the moon goes opposite Saturn. It's kind of like, yeah, sometimes, there's risk and there's reward, and no one ever, like, you hear a lot about people like, oh, you shouldn't take a risk because, it's a risk, right? But no one ever really talks about like when you do take risks, like you do get rewards. And I think that at this point, you realize it, I think this is a big, because this isn't going to be for everybody. I think you're realizing what risks you took that have rewards and what risks you shouldn't take that don't have the rewards. Again, or seeing maybe where the pitfalls are. I think that's what a lot of Tuesday is, especially too, because I think as the North Node's in Taurus, there's a complete shift in, tone. I think there's a sense of like, oh, I just want to have a good time. North Node in Taurus. Can we just have fun and look at things in a good way? And that South Node in Scorpio is like, again, what's that saying? It's like weak people make hard times make strong people make good times. That's kind of like this, like that North Node in Taurus. It's like when you see things operating really well, when you see a beautiful garden, when you see a farm or anything like that, and you see the life and the vegetation, that there's a that ecosystem is thriving, and it's not just because it's by random accident, right? Like I shouldn't say nothing's by accident, but that South Node in Scorpio is like, that the plants have the nourishment they need. It takes, literal shit for, or piss to clean things up, to get the ground full of nutrients. So I just think Tuesday's a really big deal. I can't get over that shift. But let's go to Wednesday. Whoops, wrong button. Let's go to Wednesday. On Wednesday, we have another shift. And on Wednesday, the moon's going to be making a trine to Mars. I like that. But the sun goes into Aquarius. Now, this isn't necessarily the biggest deal in the world, but something that I think a lot about is that sun going into, let's go into it. So the sun doesn't enter Aquarius until a little bit later on in the evening, I think. Yeah, around 6 p.m. So again, it's not really till the end of the day. But this is also about when the moon is trining Mars here. So all day Wednesday, building up into Wednesday evening, is pretty much what we're talking about here. And that moon's going to be in Leo, making a trine to Mars in Sagittarius. How much farther can you go when you have confidence? Like moon in Leo, when you've got that pride, when you've got that confidence, how much farther can you aim? How much farther can you go? What is what's the next target? Can you aim higher? Can you go farther? Right? This also, though, I think another way to look at it would be the moon in Leo trining Mars in Sagittarius is very like, you have to go the distance because the sun's about to enter Aquarius. The sun going into detriment, right? The sun is in detriment in Aquarius. It doesn't really work that well, all that there. Because again, we're in the middle of winter. It's cold for most, again, all of astrology is written in the northern hemisphere. So this stuff's for the northern hemisphere. In Australia and it's summertime, okay. But the sun's in Aquarius up here and it's cold. It's wintertime. There's less sun. There's less daylight, right? We are now at the bottom of, I think it's like right now, well, what is it? Winter is when nights are the longest, right? But now they're increasing. But this is like the bottom until we get to Pisces, where things really start to change. And as that sun's in Aquarius, it's like we're in the dead of winter, but we only have 30 more days. Like what I do love about Aquarius season is it's like, all right, we're in the middle of it now. We're in the thick of it, but we're versus like 2 months ago, we were like, fuck, we're getting ready for all this shit. I think as the sun goes into Aquarius, you have to reserve your energy. You can't that sun is that life force energy, right? That egoic energy, that, you know, sense of self, that sense of pride. And that is that's an asset that's valuable. Don't waste it on anything. Don't waste it on everything. I think as the moon is in Leo, trining Mars in Sagittarius, is like, soak up that cockiness and soak up that attitude, because the sun's going to go into Aquarius and you're going to need it for your travels, right? Like, you know, I think as the sun's in Aquarius, that's we're on the outside. Everything's in Aquarius right now, really, too. There is the sense of we're on the outside of the walls, where we're seeing things through a different perspective. We are going through, you know, it's pretty much like, you know, well, again, winter sucks. Typically, we'll have a bad 30 days, but we'll get over it. But it's just kind of like, you know, we're in the middle of winter now. Now it's not holiday season. So it's just going to be uncomfortable for a little while. It's going to be the cold season for a little while. So we get to, so yeah, I think as the sun goes into Aquarius, things really like tone down, and it's really about bringing in that energy. But then we get to Thursday. And on Thursday, the moon's going to ingress into Virgo and immediately make an opposition to Jupiter, which I really like. And Mars is going to be at the galactic center. I really like that too. So let's do this. Let's kind of go hour by hour here. Going into the morning of the 20th, yeah, the moon's going to ingress into Virgo and immediately make an opposition to Jupiter. You know, there's so much about technology when it comes to both Virgo and Aquarius. Like, I love, I just heard, I've heard this saying a few times during the pandemic, but I just heard it again the other day of like, because for something else that happened in history, but it's like technology solves the problem that like technology created. And I feel like I feel like that's such the Aquarius thing, right? There's a duality to knowing, there's a duality of seeing things outside the box and like, you know, being inventive, right? But I'm just bringing that up because I think as the moon's in Virgo, right, there is this connection, there's this feeling of what we need, what's going to make us feel what's going to make us feel comfortable. Moon in Virgo, being organized, being tidy, being connected to what we have, making a plan, making a list, touching things. Moon in Virgo anxiety is so like touching things, right? But the moon in Virgo is going to go opposite in Jupiter and Pisces. Moon in Virgo is like, now, well, with Jupiter and Pisces, like I said in that video, it's an aversion to all of this stuff. So while all of this crap is happening, I feel like on Thursday with Jupiter, it's also Jupiter's day. Jupiter and Pisces like, hey, but there will be a good day. There's going to be, you know, good things are happening and they're slowly on their way. I feel like the moon in Virgo is like, this is a great day to plan on what you're going to do when everything opens back up and everything's great again. Like moon in Virgo opposite Jupiter and Pisces is a great day to kind of like, again, well, like, what is that? What are they called? The vision boards that everyone's doing. This is like vision board time. This is getting specific about what it is that you want to increase, what it is that you want, what it is that you're dreaming of. But I think is that moon's in Virgo, and this is our like that. It's, you know, like that moon in Virgo energy is so like needing to organize, needing to schedule, needing to count everything in specific detail to feel that comfort. And I think as the moon goes opposite Jupiter and Pisces, there is doing that is very uplifting, right? Planning on what's going to be ahead, keeping yourself focused on a goal and a target. I mean, like this is the big thing with Mars being at the galactic center is like, you know, there's a lot of things that you kind of have to take leaps of faith on. And again, we're going into a very, you know, cold and hard winter of nothing but deadly disease or whatever the thing was that the White House said. But the moon, you know, going opposite Jupiter. So like, what is your goal? Are you going to like, well, like straight up now with the nodes in Taurus and Scorpio, are you going to live or are you going to die? And what is that goal? What is that next? What is that dream? What is that vision for you? Like, what are you actively going towards? What are you saying? What are you wanting more of in your life? And what do you want to increase? And I feel like this is kind of like a great way to get your mind off all this stuff is to have a vision, to have like truly have a vision, have something that you believe in, have something that you want, and have something to work towards, have something to earn. And I think as the Mars is on the galactic center, you know, the galactic center is just where the center of the Milky Way galaxy is. And I love what Dane Rudhyar says about it. If you guys have never read Dane Rudhyar, it's literally the funniest astrology stuff to read. This fool just goes off on like the most like, it's anyway, Dane Rudhyar, he just goes off on the most woke shit. But Mars being at this galactic center, right? There is this kind of question of, what are we fighting for? What are the deeper reasons? What is the deeper message here? The galactic center is looking at things through that very humanistic, very galactic way of like, hey, we're not just, this nation or just Earth. Like, we're all here pretty much together, which I hate. I hate that saying of we're all in this together. Remember when they'd play that in the grocery stores? But we're literally now, it's like, we're all in this fucking shit together. And like, I hate being this corny, but this is something I say a lot. It's like, you've got to be the change that you want to see. And I think as Mars is here in the galactic center, I think there's this deep connection and this real deep check-in with like, why are you fighting the fight that you're fighting, right? What Mars and Sagittarius, what is again, what are you fighting for? What beliefs, what ideal? Where are you going? We had that Mars square Neptune where we kind of got clear that maybe we don't know, or maybe we need to have a little bit more clarity. But I think this Mars conjoining the galactic center is this like, you've got to find that in yourself, right? And I think as this moon in Virgo is opposite Jupiter and Pisces, really looking at the big picture here, knowing that this isn't going to last forever, knowing that we get through winter and that there will be a spring and that there will be a summer and it's going to be great. It's going to be fun. I think a lot of this though is like, keep your eyes on the prize, keep yourself elevated and focused, and have a plan, have something to go towards. I mean, also too, Mars is going to be going into Capricorn here. Like when Mars goes into Capricorn, everything changes. Because then literally like a day or two later, Mercury will go back into Capricorn and we're pretty serious. Like it's go time. So Thursday's interesting. Moon opposite Jupiter. I think it's really just about saying what's next. What's the big picture here? What are your goals? What are your dreams? What do you want to work towards? What's worth working towards? Again, just keeping your eye on the bigger picture, keeping your eye on the ball, I think is also maybe a good way to look at it. So that's pretty much Thursday. We get into Friday, right? Is that what we get into? So we get into Friday. Oh, I should probably pull this up. And the moon's going to be making a trine to Venus the whole time, pretty much. And then the moon's going to go opposite Neptune later on in that evening. Not horrible, but I think this is picking up the pieces of this Venus retrograde thing, right? On Friday, Venus's day, the moon's going to be trining Venus, where, I mean, Venus is almost done. We're almost done with Venus's retrograde. It literally happened so fast. But I think as the moon's in Virgo, trining Venus retrograding Capricorn is realizing like, with that moon in Virgo is like getting your list ready, right? Like getting yourself organized, having a plan. But I think as the moon's trining Venus retrograde, there's a sense of like, your plans will look different after you have had a value shift, right? The way that you organize yourself and the way that you planned things to execute it, right? That's going to look different after you've undergone this. I mean, Venus is starting to become visible now as that morning star. Like, have you not realized where you've changed? Have you not realized where your value has shifted? Where you are bringing more of your attention? What is more valuable for you? And Venus Capricorn, have you changed the system that you've implemented? Have you changed the rules that you play by? Have you changed, again, what structure works for you? What rules are fun to play by? I think as this moon's in Virgo trining Venus, there's this kind of connection to like, this is different and this is good. This is different and I like this. This is different and again, well, like quitting something. I'm now almost 45. I'm like 45 days without soda. That's been one of my big ones this year is quitting soda. And it's so funny how I love that I've been like addicted to so many things because now I just like get off at like quitting stuff. But it's super funny because when you quit something, like, I remember when I quit cigarettes, God, those first 3 days are so tantalizing. They're so it's so hard, but then God, like 2 weeks in, you're kind of like, this is weird. This is different. You're like, you kind of almost forget about what it used to be like. And I just think this moon in Virgo trining Venus in Capricorn is like, things are different. The North Node is now in Taurus too. So it's activating that Venus stuff, that value shift has occurred. And this is really checking in with it and kind of like, I think accepting it, being a little bit more aware of it. It's different because also too, when we go a little bit later into Friday night, is this Friday night that I'm thinking? Yeah. So Friday night, the moon's going to go opposite Neptune, where again, there's a two-way street here. there is a sense of this being like, wow, this is nice, and really romanticizing it and really enjoying it for what it is and kind of making you dream bigger. But I think the other thing is a lot of you might psych yourself out, because I think that moon in Virgo trining Venus in Capricorn, it's like, uh-oh, different. This is not different. This is uncomfortable. And then that moon going opposite Neptune is like just overwhelming confusion. Again, Neptune is deception. Neptune is illusions. And that moon in Virgo is really trying to be like, it's like the moon in Virgo is like trying to watch the magician do the magic trick. And it's like, okay, how are they doing that? Sometimes it spoils the fun, but also I think this moon in Virgo opposite Neptune and Pisces is just kind of trying to look for the illusion, trying to look for what is deceiving you, right? And you might find it. There might be something that is deceiving you, but it may just be magic. Like the magician might just be doing magic, honestly. And I just think as the moon trines Venus and then goes opposite Neptune, there is this kind of like, all right, this is different. This is and maybe it's some people are liking it, but if for those that don't like it, this moon opposite Neptune is like, what is this? What's going on? Why do I feel this way? Excuse me. I'm still sick. I think I got that flu Rona thing that they were talking about, because like on last Friday, it was totally the flu. It definitely wasn't COVID, but now I can't taste or smell anything. So I think I got the flu Rona. Anyway, moon is opposite Neptune. I just think this is at the very minimum being a little bit confused of what's next. But I think it's just, again, change is a weird process, right? Sometimes it is an overnight thing, but I think this is kind of realizing where those changes have occurred. And I don't know, maybe that just confuses you. Maybe that just overwhelms you. Friday, I think, again, is just kind of looking for what's deceiving you. And maybe there isn't anything there. Again, maybe the magician's just doing magic. You just have to believe. But then we get to Saturday. And on Saturday, the moon is going to be making a square to Mars before it ingresses into Libra and makes a trine to the sun and Mercury. So I kind of like Saturday. I think this is actually mostly Saturday evening when all this happens. And yeah, the moon will make a square to Mars. Hey, you can't overthink it. Mars at the galactic center. Again, sometimes you just kind of have to go. Like that moon in Virgo, I think there's a certain point in which you got to stop asking questions. There's a certain point where you got to turn off your TV, right? Moon in Virgo squaring Mars in Sagittarius is kind of like it's a mixture, right? It's like, don't overthink it, don't overplan it, specify it. That'll throw off everything. But there's also the sense of like, moon in Virgo. It's kind of like when you go for a trip and it's not like you're a couple hours into your trip, you realize you forgot something at home and you're like, fuck. That's kind of like this. You might forget some things. Maybe that's what that moon and Neptune is. It's like, I have everything and you actually don't. And that moon square Mars is like, fuck, I left without my most important bag. I would just say it's moon in Virgo squaring Mars in Sagittarius could just be really like, just imagine a Virgo and a Sagittarius arguing with each other. Like how just it doesn't go far. But anyway, the moon enters Libra a little bit later, which is way better, right? Because I think that moon in Virgo squaring Mars in Sagittarius is like, hey, again, trying to be specific and get every little thing on your list isn't going to necessarily work. But then the moon ingresses into Libra and really starts to trine this Mercury Sun thing. And by the way, this is like when the Mercury Cazimi is going on, which actually isn't really happening until Sunday. But this is Saturday night, right? We're going into Saturday evening and that moon going into Libra. And it's like, all right, let's just negotiate. Let's make things work. I think this is all about negotiating, trying to find the harmony, trying to find the balance, right? Mercury's retrograde in Aquarius. And we're going to have that Mercury Cazimi where everything kind of becomes, we're already at the Mercury Cazimi. We just started the Mercury retrograde. I think this is kind of like coming to terms with things and be like, all right, let's talk about this. Let's negotiate it. Let's work it out. I think this is good, again, for socializing, creativity, all of the fun stuff. And then pretty much as we get into Sunday morning, we literally wake up with the Mercury Cazimi. And again, we kind of check in, a little bit of clarity. We kind of go, okay, this is what's changing. This is Mercury is in between the sun and the earth, right? And it's retrograde. This is kind of like some truth being revealed, some things kind of getting very clear. I think Mercury squaring Uranus, that retrograde, the things that come undone, the things that are very unexpected. This is when we realize what the problem was. Why did things break? Why did things do the way that what? And this is also maybe how do we solve the emergency? How do we actually, like, what is next? I think this Mercury Cazimi is like, okay, now we have a little bit of better idea of what moving forward is going to look like. And I mean, at the same time too, the moon on Sunday, after we have this Mercury Cazimi, this moon on Sunday is going to be trining Saturn. So there is this kind of like, negotiating, working things out to get something done, to Saturn, authorities, maturity, discipline. What do you need to get done? How do you need to handle things? That moon in Libra trining Saturn is like being able to say what needs to be said, right, and get your point across. So I just think things. The hard part is the moon will be squaring Venus before it trines Saturn. So there is the sense of like, you don't always get everything that you negotiate, but that's the whole point of a negotiation, right? I think it's about throwing out maybe more than what, throwing out more and then negotiating your way to what you do want to get. I think Sunday is about, now that, I mean, there's a lot that happens this week. This full moon in Cancer is like, hey, what do you need? And now that you've faced that, like, there's a value shift that occurs. There's a focus shift that occurs. And I think this moon in Libra trining Saturn is like, conversations become easier when you want the outcome more than you are afraid of the truth, right? Like, it's just really easy to get things done when you have a different goal in mind. It's easy to do harder things when you have a higher goal in mind, when you have a bigger purpose in mind for everything. So I think that's what a lot of Sunday is. It's kind of like having the conversations, negotiating, changing the things that you need to change, working things out the way you need to work out. And again, it's squaring Venus retrograde here in Capricorn. I don't know why I said it that way. Venus, but the moon squaring Venus is kind of like, again, you're not always going to get what you want out of the negotiation, but there's something that you've got to negotiate here. And this is the time to do it. And you can change certain things, but there's other things that you can't. And I think you should be really clear about what is up for negotiation and what is non-negotiable in your life. Like, truly. I think if I don't know, if I just, a lot of what maybe this was just me being young and I never had like the opportunity to really think about like, what do I believe in? But God, has this pandemic made very clear about, again, the certain things that I believe in, and what is like non-negotiable? Where are those boundaries for you? Where are those, what can you work out and what can you not work out? I think that's the ultimate question by Sunday is you got to come to the negotiating table and something's got to change, but there's going to be something that's non-negotiable. And that pretty much leads us to next week. By next week, Mars goes into Capricorn, Mercury retrograde goes back into Capricorn and conjoins Pluto, and Venus stations direct. I mean, we're almost done with this Venus retrograde. We've already had this value shift. We've already seen things change. As Mars goes into Capricorn, though, I mean, that's really going to just amplify and make that whole Capricorn situation louder. Sure, Venus is direct, but now that Venus is direct and Mars goes there, Mars is just going to burn up all that energy. Next week, I mean, literally everything's in Capricorn. Mars, Venus, Mercury retrograde on top of Pluto, the middle of Aquarius season. We are starting this week. We are in the thick of it. And that's not to say some people thrive in winter. Some people thrive in these situations that challenge them. And some people rise to the call, right? I think also during this week, again, there's a certain real, like, you get your needs met, you face some fears and things change. I just, like, what has changed for you since, I mean, also too, again, I guess as my final thoughts, like, I can't emphasize enough, the nodes have been in Gemini and in Sagittarius forever, since spring of 2020, since the George Floyd protests. I think it was literally like that week is when they entered. What has changed? Look at those those houses in your life. Say goodbye to everything that you've learned and say hello to the Taurus and Scorpio axis in your chart. You're going to get pretty familiar with it. And it's just like, I don't know. I feel like this week is that North Node in Taurus is like, if you want something bad enough, like you gotta, what are you willing to do to get it? Are you willing to work? What are you willing to sacrifice? What are you willing to let go of? What are you willing to dig deep into? What are you willing to fight for? Right? Like that North Node in Taurus is, if you really want something, you do have to fight for it. That South, that if you also want good things, you have to defend it. I think that's the other thing with the South Node in Scorpio too, is there's this sense of like, you know, if you want to preserve the peace, you've got to be, you know, like it's like the most peaceful societies, or like the I always forget what the statistic is. It's like, you know, the most peaceful communities or whatever, usually like the ones that are usually the most armed, the most protected. That South Node in Scorpio, it's like, you know, if you want peace, if you want everything to work good, there's typically fights that occur. Well, it's, you know, think of World War II and think of the post-economic boom. We've had so like 80 years of peace because we've had one of the, not even one, the absolute worst war and shit that this fucking world has ever been through, right? And that's not to say it's like, oh, you have to have bad things happen for good stuff to go down, but it's like there's a balance to things, right? That North Node in Taurus is, if you really want to preserve the peace, if you really want to enjoy things, that South Node in Scorpio is, there is a price you have to pay. There is a you know, sacrifice that you have to make. This is kind of like, you know, if you want the goods, you gotta pay for it. And that South Node in Scorpio is just maybe getting over when you're not so focused on how deep and bad everything is, and you're more focused on like the good and your why. I think that just becomes easier. I think it becomes easier to stay focused. So anyway, that's what I have for you guys this week. Big week. Really big week ahead. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. I truly love and appreciate every single one of you, and I'll be seeing you next week.